How is One Piece so good at consistently creating such compelling and iconic characters? Well, while many series excel in their character writing by telling phenomenal character arcs, the classic One Piece staple is actually the exact opposite. Rather than characters changing, One Piece's most powerful character stories often come from the unveiling of a character's true self. Time and again, we see this disparity between characters' reputations and their actual nature, where characters are introduced to us by what the world has labeled them as evil, as monsters, as devils, as demons, and so on. Over and over, we meet these pariahs who have been shunned by society, only for us to then learn that these outcasts are not at all like what they have been labeled, but rather they are in fact some of the most noble and virtuous figures imaginable. This revelation of the depth and kindness hiding underneath the label that the world has branded one with is the cornerstone of practically all of One Piece's greatest characters. This right here is Oda's bread and butter. Oda is not the only author to use this trope, of course, but Oda is by far the greatest at writing this type of character. Oda has written one of the most emotionally compelling epics of all time by repeatedly filling it with these type of character storylines. And the simple reason is that while characters changing over the course of a character arc is of course also very moving, and One Piece incorporates these traditional character arcs as well, there is at the same time something particularly universal to the human experience of being mislabeled. Every person at one point or another in life has experienced in some way, big or small, being misjudged and misunderstood by others. And so reading about a character who has been made a full-on outcast, whose name has been driven into the ground by a reputation that they don't deserve, when this individual is in fact a good person underneath, that naturally incites a sort of deep-seated sense of injustice and profound empathy in every reader. This concept is the goldmine of storytelling that Oda has gone back to over and over to great success. And now with Loki's introduction, it seems that we have yet another character whose reputation may be hiding a far more complex and tragic figure than we initially realized. So let's break down how this type of character writing brings together the most important broader themes of One Piece, how the different variations of this type of character writing have evolved over the course of the story, and why this type of character writing is Oda's secret key to creating such consistently emotionally powerful backstories throughout One Piece. But before we get into it, I have a phenomenal offer for you all for literally the best looking razor in the world. The Handyman Rocket Man from Manscaped. Manscaped is the sponsor for this video, and it's offering my viewers 20% off plus free international shipping on all its products. And that includes the new Rocket Man as well. Manscaped's beard trimmers are what you want to use if you actually want to up your grooming game and look good for the world. Manscaped's razors just feel so smooth on the skin that I can shave really quickly. And most importantly, they're extremely precise, allowing you to have sharp, distinct lines. Every guy looks good with some amount of facial hair. You just need the right grooming tool to figure out the perfect amount that makes you look your best. And if you want to start looking better, the Handyman tool is the most compact, sleek, and travel-sized beard trimmer that Manscaped offers. And the Rocketman colorway is, in my opinion, easily the coolest colored model of it yet. So look, spring is around the corner. If you want to start looking your best, you can get 20% off the Handyman. Just go to manscaped.com and use my promo code MORGE, and you will get 20% off plus free international shipping at checkout. Link in the description below. So that aside, to begin with, the emphasis on this type of character writing in particular ties back to one of the most important overarching themes of One Piece in general: the truth versus the narrative. The One Piece world is one wherein the fundamental problem is that evil has taken over the world and proclaimed itself as good, and it now controls the narrative to unjustly dub anyone that stands against it as evil. The simple label pirate is the broad brush that the world government wields to malign everyone who does not conform, when in reality so many of the supposed criminals are nowhere near the villains that the world government makes them out to be. The whole point is that these labels, pirates as evil, the marines as righteous, they are meaningless. Just because the narrative has been spun a certain way does not mean that is actually the truth. And therein lies the beauty of our hero, Straw Hat Luffy. Luffy is someone who travels through the world with pure eyes, unclouded by the claims of others. If someone says something is impossible, well, to Luffy, that doesn't mean that he can't achieve it. If someone says that something doesn't exist, well, to Luffy, that doesn't mean that he can't find it. And if someone says that this new friend that Luffy has met is completely evil, well, that doesn't mean that Luffy will just believe it. The beauty of Luffy, and what makes him the perfect character to pierce through this world that is steeped in lies and misinformation, is that Luffy will always make judgments for himself. We see this philosophy of his over and over, where Luffy attacks the mentality of the masses. Why should someone else tell you who is right and wrong, or good and evil? why not use your own judgment? The greatest characters in One Piece are free thinkers like this, who judge not based on what the narrative tells them is the case, but rather on the truth that they experience themselves. This is why we always see Luffy pay little heed to rumors or claims about characters' reputations. And that's precisely why Luffy has been able to make the friends that he has made over the course of the story. The Straw Hats are largely a collection of misfit toys, with many of them having been rejected by society for their supposed evil. Chopper, the monster of Drum Kingdom. Robin, the devil child of Ohara, who is a threat to the entire world. Nami, the traitor of Kokoyashi Village. Frankie, the violent crime lord of Water 7. In all of these cases, we were initially presented with a character who is viewed as evil by the outside world, and then as their story unravels, we get to see the person underneath the myth. Not a villain, but a kind-hearted, gentle soul who is deeply suffering. There is just something inherently endlessly intriguing about this type of character writing, because it constantly plays with our assumptions. We never know what type of character we're getting because their reputation may not match the true depth hiding beneath the surface. A perfect example is Doflamingo and Kuma. These two Shichibukai were introduced side by side, which in retrospect was a remarkably fitting contrast. Both are known for being extraordinarily cruel warlords by the outside world. Doflamingo, the heavenly demon, and Kuma, the supposed tyrant known for his brutality. However, while Doflamingo turns out to be far more evil than even his reputation does justice to, Kuma turns out to be possibly the single kindest soul in all of One Piece, a true saint among men. These two characters can share the same title, can be introduced in the same manner, be labeled with the same reputation, and yet none of that means anything in One Piece until we get to the character's actual story. And so in One Piece, it always feels like we are meeting every character twice. Their initial introduction is often just a mask for their true self. It's just always exciting to read a story where even the most simple or easily dismissed characters can turn out to have so much more to them. Even the most ridiculous characters can hide great pain. Even the biggest pieces of can in fact turn into fan favorites. And this is also the secret to how Oda creates particularly grand, larger-than-life characters. As even among characters whose true self does not match their reputation, there is a special niche of characters where Oda goes one step further. Characters who have not just been given an unfair reputation, but who then actively ignore said reputation and continue living life by their path without any heed to the damage it continues to do to their reputation. For example, on the one hand, you have characters like Robin or Chopper, who are victims. They are victims of their unfair reputations. Through no actions of their own, they were labeled as evil by society, even though these characters desperately wanted to be embraced. However, on the other hand, there is a different breed. These are characters who accrue a bad reputation because they refuse to stop walking the path that they know is right. They are not victims, they just don't care. These are characters who serve to communicate one of the most important messages in One Piece. Morality is not determined by what others believe you've done, morality is determined by what you have actually done. So long as you know that you are not committing any evils, you should stick to your path, even if in doing so society will misunderstand you and frame you as evil. Zoro is the first character that Oda used to introduce this concept. Zoro is supposedly a demon in human form, morally bankrupt, a murderer, and so on. But the Zoro that we meet is in fact a good man who has only gained this reputation likely because he consistently refuses to back down from those in power. But none of that matters. What matters is that Zoro himself has never done anything that he regrets. Zoro initially rejects Luffy's offer to become a pirate because Zoro assumes that Luffy is asking him to actually become a violent, cruel pirate. But after Zoro realizes Luffy's true nature, Zoro has no problem accepting to become a pirate because Zoro really does not care if he is now going to be labeled an evil pirate. All Zoro cares about is continuing to live by his own moral standards. These types of characters who actively disregard what the world dubs them as and instead continue to live exactly the way that they want because all that matters is that they themselves know that they are on the right path. Those are the characters that Oda tends to place on a pedestal in the story, because in many ways it takes the strongest spirit to completely refuse to let how society defines you have any bearing on you whatsoever. Remember, in real life, the average person isn't usually faced with life and death scenarios that One Piece characters face, where we would have to act as brave heroes. But the common person is faced every single day with lots of moral choices. There are a lot of times that you can make a certain choice that you know doesn't sit right with you, but will help you fit in better or will help make you more accepted. It takes a strong spirit to instead stick to what you know is correct, even if it leads to others labeling you someone that you're not as a result. While Zoro is the first model, we see this over and over in One Piece. Despite the world telling Tom that it was wrong to build the sea train for Roger, Tom knew the type of man that Roger was. Tom knew that he did the right thing making a ship for Roger, and Tom would rather go to the grave labeled as a criminal by society than beg for forgiveness for something that he knew that he did not regret. Oden is a particularly interesting and extended case of this type of messaging, as with Oden we got to see this beautiful cycle. From the beginning, we were introduced to Oden with him supposedly being the scourge of Wano with this terrible reputation. Then, we the reader were shown how Oden accrued this reputation. We got a glimpse of the fact that Oden would often do the right thing, but just be misunderstood by society, or he would even welcome society's ire without ever bothering to try to clear his name or explain his actions. And so, even though Oden did good deeds, society viewed him as a troublemaker. However, as time went on, Oden's greatness eventually shone through, and the people of Wano began to respect him as a great figure, even praying for his return to free them from Kaido and Orochi. However, upon Oden's return, he did not do what society wanted of him, which was to fight. Oden instead did what he believed was the morally right option, which was to dance instead. This then turned him into the laughingstock of the nation for 5 long years, making his reputation worse than ever. But then when his final moments came, the people of Wano found out the truth, and now they once again realized Oden's greatness and realized that they had been completely wrong about him. But the key to Oden's entire story is that Oden himself never changed. As Oden explained to his father, Oden had not changed one bit from the time that he was disowned as the shame of Wano till now, where he is being revered by the people of Wano as a great man. Oden has always just been himself. He's always just been Oden. It's the people's perceptions of him that shifted over time. Oden had always been helping others. People just couldn't see it, so they labeled him a villain. Then when Oden helped reform Kuri and Oden's scabbards worked to fix his image, then the people of Wano could finally see the good that Oden was doing, and so they assumed that he has grown into a better person. But the key is, there was no growth. It was always the same man living his life the same way. And it was the same again when Oden returned. Oden didn't suddenly become a coward when he danced instead of fighting, and Oden didn't suddenly become brave when he chose to fight or to boil for his scabbards. Oden was in fact consistent. He was always walking the path that he believed would help the most people. Society just couldn't understand him until the end. Oden's story is not about a character arc. It's not about a man who had to change, it's about the nature of reputation versus the truth. And that's precisely why Oden as a character so strongly parallels Zoro, and why Oda has tied them together with Enma and so on, because Oden is a continuation of the idea initially represented in the story through Zoro. Always do what you know is right. As long as you don't have regrets, it doesn't matter how much others misunderstand you and malign you. Your identity is defined by you, and only you. This concept doesn't even always have to do with morality, it can also be about dignity and respect. Oden's story also featured him becoming a laughingstock for some time by all of Wano. Oden sacrificed dignity and respect, something that most all humans to some degree intrinsically want from others: validation. But Oden sacrificed that for doing what mattered more to his own values, and this is the same type of character writing that Oda uses for characters like Senor Pink or Hirolook. Characters who cast aside any sort of societal validation and respect from others for instead staying true to what matters to them. Senor Pink proudly becoming a joke for the sake of his wife's smile, Hirolook never stopping his work to cure people no matter how much it grew his reputation as a quack doctor. But first, this month we have some of the most legendary islands in One Piece for you. You can get God Valley, Marijua, Laugh-Tale, and Impel Down. The posters are printed on matte paper, hand-cut by the artist himself. Each of these posters can be purchased individually, or you can get all 4 of them together for 50% off. You can also still get the premium package if you want to appear on my streams, and in that case you can also choose any poster from 2024 as well. So if you want God Valley, Marijua, Laugh-Tale, and Impel Down for your walls, just hit the link in the description below. All posters from 2024 will also be available in the complete original set bundle. But at the end of it all, why does Oda so frequently like to use this type of character writing? Well, for one, it always keeps us guessing as to the true nature of characters, when we never know if a character is going to be as terrible as their reputation suggests, or instead a genuinely noble figure. It makes meeting every new character an adventure. But more importantly, it's a writing trick that both subverts expectations and creates guaranteed empathy. When a character is supposedly awful and then they turn out to actually be good, there is a simple sense of pleasant surprise that makes you feel excited to learn who this character actually is, as seeing someone in a new light builds a sense of complexity and mystery to the character. I still remember the entire sequence with Kuma in Thriller Bark. He initially seemed like the Terminator sent to crush the Straw Hats. Then we saw a strange glimpse of honor when Kuma offered Zoro a way to save Luffy, albeit at the cost of Zoro's own life. And then after that entire gut-wrenching scenario, as Kuma leaves, we got this hint that maybe this guy was in fact a lot softer than he initially let on. Maybe there was a lot more happening under the surface in this trial that he gave the Straw Hats than we realized. So many questions popped up around Kuma after his final words at Throwbark, and this one bit of dialogue turned a simple, obedient, supposedly cruel Shichibukai into one of the most fascinating question marks in One Piece, a character who we kept wanting to learn more about, and whose true self, in the end, certainly did not disappoint. This style of character writing is also almost guaranteed to consistently pull at readers' heartstrings, because there's something that just feels so fundamentally wrong about learning that a character is in fact secretly extremely good, but everyone else has been calling them evil and slandering them for so long. We as the reader then want to see these characters' names cleared. We want to see society understand them the way that we understand them. And that's simultaneously why it's so satisfying when Oda rewards these mislabeled characters in some way. Maybe their names aren't cleared in the eyes of the world, but the Straw Hats accept them. Or they find closure in some way, or they become understood and admired after their death. And here we finally get to the newest in Oda's long-running line of characters whose perceived self does not match their true self. Loki from the very beginning was written much like Odin, with a terrible reputation that preceded him, and in Loki's case, he also had been charged with a seemingly unforgivable crime on top of everything else. And yet from the very beginning, Oda also began to hint that Loki may have a kinder heart underneath the surface. We're also then shown that Loki has pride and sticks to his morals despite the consequences, much like other admirable characters of similar nature. And finally, we learn that there is something more to the story of Loki killing his father. Everything for Loki is shaping up to reveal him as very different from the character that the rest of Elbaf has made him out to be, likely setting Loki on a trajectory to go down as yet another one of One Piece's all-time great character stories. Because anytime we're set up with this type of character in particular, you just know that Oda is about to go into his signature storytelling angle, one that he consistently executes to absolute perfection to produce tragic character storylines centered around reputation versus reality better than any other writer I know of. So let me know what you believe the truth of Loki's past was, and how you believe Loki's story will resolve in the comments below. And if you want to hear my extended thoughts on the direction of Loki's story, you can listen to my weekly podcast that just dropped by becoming a member or by supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below.